Okay, good.
Okay, anyway, we'll go ahead and start. We got some guests tonight, and Thursday night edition of Business Lighthouse Family Group. Oh, there's a good one. I can't see it though. Take this link here. Here's a good one. This is about overcoming loneliness. Let's see what it has to do with recovery. They're talking about step 8, which is we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And it's my briefcase back there. Yeah, that black one. Would you? Thank you. Sorry, I just can't see anymore. I need to go back to the what is it? The optometrist. Yeah, thanks.
I know, I got some other glasses in here that are like,
Let's see here. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, here we go. These will do the trick. No, those aren't much better. Okay, loneliness and isolation go along with guilt and shame, with the guilt and shame that we feel about who we are or what we've done. We may feel so cut off from others that we feel lonely even when we're around other people. Guilt and fear of being hurt and self-hatred can make us unable to believe in the love others have for us. We can feel all alone in the struggle even when there are people beside us who want to help. Being willing to accept their love is part of the preparation for making amends. Wise King Solomon observed, 2 people are better than one, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Likewise, 2 people lying close together can keep each other warm. But how can one be warm alone? A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but 2 can stand back to back and conquer. 3 are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. That's all from Ecclesiastes. Loneliness can break us and defeat us in the recovery process. When we prepare to make amends, we also need to prepare our heart to accept whatever love, support, or friendship is offered in return. These supportive relationships, along with God's supporting hand, will strengthen our life considerably. With our friends and God joining with us to form a triple braided cord, we will not be easily broken or turned from the path to recovery. That reminds me of a saying I used to hear all the time about, when you get into recovery, you want to get into the middle of it. And because when you fall, then you're surrounded by people who can catch you. When we first get into recovery, we have a tendency to stay on the outer edges, and literally and figuratively. Like, we start going to, say, 12-step meetings. We want to sit as close to the door as possible, so when the meeting's over, we're just out. We don't want to talk to anybody. We don't want to get involved. But I noticed in my own journey, when I started sitting opposite the door, on the complete other end, nowhere near the door, all of a sudden I started connecting a little bit more, because now once the meeting's over, you have no choice but to deal with people on your way out. And there's always somebody in recovery that can spot a newbie and will grab you and introduce themselves and encourage you, and all of a sudden you're part of something bigger than you. And that's what it takes. That's how we get better. Okay, so let's talk about learned helplessness tonight. I know we're starting a little bit late and everybody's got stuff they need to do. So I'll try to keep this as short as possible. It looks like a lot on the board, but we'll get through it. My brother.
That's a run.
Can't wait to catch up.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is learned helplessness? It's kind of like it sounds, really. We literally learn how to be helpless. Now, everybody can, if you don't pick something up about yourself, I would be surprised. We can all have a little bit of learned helplessness. It could be as simple as, expecting someone else to open the door, and then you as you walk to the door on one occasion, there's nobody else but you, and you realize that you've actually paused for a moment expecting someone else to open the door. Maybe ladies experience this more than men. Before you realize, oh, wait a minute, I've got to open the door, right? So the way it becomes very detrimental is because it gets combined with our unrealistic expectations. We learn how to be helpless because we learned or we expect, say, something else to work it out. And you'll see this, it's so much of it lies in our trauma. And I'll get into that a little bit more, but the way it's defined is learned helplessness is just being unable to find resolutions to different situations, even when a solution is accessible. I'm going to come down here for a minute and talk about the study. Researchers discovered this. They kind of stumbled upon it. They were doing some research on dogs, and they weren't trying to. They arrived at this learned helplessness theory, wherein what they noticed is they would give dogs an electrical shock, but they also would have a way out of the cage. But the dogs who'd been shocked multiple times, instead of seeking the solution and running out of the cage, they would just cower in the corner and just get shocked. They would continue to get shocked, even though there was an open door. And so anyway, they translate this into humans, and they did some human experiences, not with shock treatment, but with like loud noises.
They should have, after doing that to those poor dogs.
I know.
They should have just shocked those humans.
Exactly.
That's
Or
horrible.
the researchers,
That's
right?
awful.
And so here we are, after a series of, not just lifetime, but even in our addiction, even in through the process of alcoholism, that in and of itself is a traumatic experience. And so you try to do better, and then it always turns bad. And then we try again, and then it turns bad. And then we try again, and then it turns bad. And eventually this learned helplessness kicks in, and we start thinking, well, what's the use? It's never going to work out anyway, or I've already tried that one thing, or I've already tried that 100 times, or I don't see how that's going to help. And that ends up becoming the person's identity. And so I'm going back to number 2 here. This is when we end up just complaining a lot. We feel overwhelmed by any given experience. Now this doesn't just relate to addiction and recovery process, but of course that's the context we're talking about it in. We become, and here's the lie. Eventually we just live in this lie that we tell ourselves that we're incapable of making a positive difference in any given circumstance. This is what it looks like when we're quitting, when we're giving up easily, when we stop fighting for ourselves. It's that learned helplessness. And there's something, well, I'll kind of wait until I get closer to the solution, but there's something that seems to drive that, and that is a threat, like an actual threat to our well-being. For example, let's say I may have a rough time at work, but I know that if I quit this job, I'm not going to be getting that promotion to better my life, but it's gotten so bad that the alternative is acceptable. The alternative is I'm going to go ahead and quit my job, even though I won't be able to make my rent payment, but that's okay because somebody else will. So even though we know we're going to put ourselves in a lesser position, we'll do it anyway because it's an acceptable position. And therein lies the solution too. Is that, and that's what we talk about all the time with, families being willing to disconnect. Allow us to have an even lower position. What my mom needs to say is, well, gee, I'm sorry you quit your job. That was really stupid. And I don't know how you're going to pay your rent. Wow, now they're going to come take your car. Well, now they're going to, et cetera, et cetera. But that's not what tends to happen, but that's what needs to happen if we're going to achieve lasting recovery. And of course, we talk about that all the time. So let's get into the trauma aspect of it. I don't know if they still shock dogs today. I know back in the 60s it wasn't even a big deal, but I know they're still shocking humans. Electric shock therapy. God, I got a story about that. Not personal, but a guy I worked with once.
I used to do it, people.
Oh, did you really? Much success?
Some of them. I mean, I just
It's kind of
assisted
a-
with it, but
it's
that's
kind
what
of a
that's what we
baby thing,
did back
right?
in the
It's
80s. Was
like
we did electric shock treatment.
Spin them around, and sometimes it'll settle, and
Yeah,
sometimes it
sometimes
doesn't.
it helped.
Wow.
So lots of times now they're using invertebrates like octopuses for experiments because you don't have to go through all those protocols and get your, signed off by the USDA and the other
Yeah.
things because they're invertebrates, so they don't have the same protections.
Interesting. Huh. Fascinating. Okay. I was just curious. Okay, so understanding the trauma that leads to this learned helplessness is a loss of control, right? It's this, and think about this, just over your lifetime. We have an experience and we feel a loss of control. We feel like something's beyond our control. You may have even tried to regain control. Now I'm calling my boss and I'm going, oh man, I messed up. Please let me come back. But it doesn't work. He says, sorry, you left us in bad shape. You're never going to work here again. The point being, no matter what we try, it still doesn't seem to get the results that we want. And so what's happening is we feel like we don't have control. And remember, all this is backed up by all these other defects. A deep-rooted sense of inadequacy, that I'm not enough anyway, right? A lot of insecurities, a lot of disappointments, a lot of self-judgment, a lot of self-criticism. So we're not, in learned helplessness, we're not viewing ourselves in the world from a healthy perspective to begin with. And, therein lies another part of the solution is learning how to see ourselves differently so we can function differently. And so, the belief becomes, well, nothing has ever worked, therefore nothing will ever work. And this is why it's so dangerous, is because when we think, in learned helplessness, when we think, well, nothing ever has worked anyway, we're really thinking subjectively. It doesn't mean nothing that we've ever done has worked. It means it hasn't worked fast enough, big enough, with less effort, right? Things have worked, but not to the degree that necessarily we felt rewarded instantly. And so we go through life, bringing this same very distorted judgment to ourselves and then making decisions based on that. When, if you asked our families, they say, well, I tried that and it didn't work. And they'd be like, well, what do you mean it didn't work? Your self-esteem was improving, you were taking care of your own bills, you were making friends. What do you mean it didn't work? But the way the addict, alcoholic sees it is yeah, but I still didn't get this or that or this or that or this or that fast enough, right? It's never big enough, quick enough, fast enough, whatever. So it's a very subjective idea that, well, I've been trying to make something better, nothing ever works, so therefore it never will work. So we're already off to a negative orientation. It ends up eroding our sense of well-being. And of course, if you've experienced learned helplessness, and I think most of us have to varying degrees for a very long time. And a lot of that can be taught, or I should say learned, just through codependency. I know, and I openly share my story, my relationship with my mom. That was always on the forefront of my mind. I knew absolutely, if I want to quit my job today, I'll quit it. And she'll be mad, but she's still going to give me some allowance. She's still going to give me gas money. She's still going to make my car payment. She's still going to take care of me. But you see how in learned helplessness, we don't see life from a positive orientation, meaning a desire to achieve and thrive and succeed. In learned helplessness, we see life from a negative orientation. What can I get away with? What's the absolute minimal amount I can do and still exist? It's very sick, obviously. That's the alcoholism and addiction brain. We lack the confidence to tackle challenges and and learn new skills, and that's a big one. So much of what we gain from having experiences is the learning aspect of it. And yet we can have an experience where we should have learned a whole bunch of stuff, but because it didn't end with a nice shiny red Corvette, the alcoholic thinks, oh God, it was worthless, it amounted to nothing. Well, no, you just had a great life lesson. We don't see it like that. Learned helplessness isn't about that. And recognizing, well, of course, this is gone. Eroding our sense of well-being, we don't recognize that our circumstances are under our control. We see, of course, you guys are familiar with this, so I'll tie it in. We don't see our self or our experience from a position of what we're contributing to it. We see our experience from a position of what we're getting from it. And so we're not thinking in rational terms of taking on challenges and seeking to at least learn something. We're getting the benefit out of every experience. We're so feelings driven. It's like, oh, this is boring, this isn't fun anymore, I don't want to do it. And it's okay because I'm comfortable just existing. Right? It's that hopelessness, we were talking about earlier, that discouragement. So, and that is one of the characteristics. I don't know if I put those on the board here. We'll get to some of them. Okay, so we go through life feeling unsure about ourselves, unsure about others and others' capabilities. We feel, or we doubt our own abilities. I just don't know. I don't think I could. And this is the crazy thing too with addicts, alcoholics. This was just part of a conversation I was having with somebody else. Enormously intelligent, right? Very creative. Amazing ideas, so much potential, and usually a history of having established some of those skills and talents. Right? You look back and it's not unusual to find, artists among us, musicians among us, very bright people among us, and yet, because of learned helplessness, we doubt our own abilities. And everyone else in the family's like, oh my God, you'd be so good at that. I just don't know. I don't think so. Well, we do, and we've been alive for 60 years, and we know a few things, and we're telling you would be good at that. But as a young up and coming alcoholic, we're like, I just don't think so. I don't know. That's learned helplessness. We don't believe it will matter, meaning our effort. We don't believe our effort will matter. And eventually there's no way out. So where that leaves us is just dependent on others. But we don't just stay dependent on others. We build a manner of living that is literally centered around complaining, what we would refer to as the shamelessness. Remember, shameful and shameless go together. They're always at the same, or they're the same coin, always present at the same time. We just show one more than the other. So the way in our learned helplessness we learn how to deal with this shame is we just present to the world our shamelessness. When really it's just it's an overwhelming fear of even making an effort. Right? Y'all just don't know what you're talking about. I don't need to do anything different. I just need y'all off my back. And that's where we stay. Well, I could take this thing seriously if only this and that and this and that. It's that learned helplessness. It's nothing's ever worked out anyway. It's probably, I don't see how it's going to work out now. I don't want to try because then I'm going to feel more shame. And so we get stuck in this little box. You know, we literally, it's like the end of number 3 here. We see no way out. And so we just stay stuck. And so, well, we don't stay stuck. We feel stuck, and then we drink and we use and we wreak havoc, and then we either die in jails, institutions, or death. The more we are able to depend on others, and I'm not talking about emotionally, I'm talking about financially, fiscally. You know, as an adult, there's an interesting term, and I won't spend too much time on it, but this adult entitled dependence. And I didn't come up with that, but man, it sure makes a lot of sense. I can see myself all over that. That's exactly, take that if you need to. I could totally see, that's exactly what I was. Oh my God, I was an adult who had an overwhelming sense of entitlement, who had become completely dependent upon my mom and my grandfather. And I knew that they would always, at least drop a little safety net. But, talk about setting the bar low. It's like, well, it's okay because they'll keep me from completely failing. Meaning, there's always a spare bedroom I can sleep in, right? Well, that's that learned helplessness thinking. We have to literally learn how to think in the opposite direction. And that's where the esteem is, and that's where the confidence is that's great that my mom would never allow me to be homeless, but I'm not trying to just dodge homelessness. I want to do something, right? I want to achieve some things. But learned helplessness, the stuff that leads to learned helplessness needs to get worked out first. It's not a, golly, that's, it sounds like you've got movers and shakers in the world, and then you've got the losers that'll never amount to anything. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a condition that is so driven by all this undealt with trauma that leaves us with this overwhelming sense that I'm just not good enough. It just comes out as, y'all don't know what you're talking about. I don't have any problems. I'm not the one that needs to look at themselves. You are, you guys, and this and that. That's just the coping mechanism. But what's underneath all of that other stuff is this person who's scared to death to even make an effort to change, because all efforts in the past didn't work. And since they didn't work, they're never gonna work. Think how crazy that thinking is. And yet, it is apropos for the addict. That is exactly how we think. Well, it's never worked out in the past, therefore it's never going to work out, so why should I try? And we can live there if someone else will foot the bill for our existence. What moves us past that is there is no more safety net. And what happens is, and of course, families are always scared of this little part of the phase or the stages of growth is, well, what if they don't step up? What if they don't step up and they end up, homeless, or they end up whatever at the shelter, or that could happen. But what tends to happen is human nature. when we no longer have that as an option on the table, and we know it, when we will test it, we will see if they really mean it. I know my mom said that, but she said that before, and she won't, she's never really followed through with it, so she's never going to follow through with it. It's just, she's just frustrated with me, and so we'll test it, and we'll test it, and we'll test it. The minute that we believe it, we actually start making an effort, because then it becomes real. It's not enough, mama bears and papa bears can talk about all they want. This is it, son, I'm serious, man, this is the last time, we're not going to do it anymore. You gotta get a handle on it. I know. What the addict is thinking is, I really wish I could. I really hope things magically work out, but they're not really gonna let me be homeless. There's just no way. And then, of course, we don't really make the effort that we should, and we'll do good for a while. And you guys know the phases. We go through the phases, and then we crash and burn, and then here we go again. That is so key to the solution of overcoming this learned helplessness, is when the recovering alcoholic addict believes, without a doubt, the safety net is gone. Now, unconditional love is still there, encouragement is still there, support is there, everything, nothing's different. It's just, we're not going to clean up any more messes. So if you engage in behavior that means you can't pay your rent, well, what is the natural consequence of that? You're probably going to get evicted unless you can make some moves. And you'd be amazed when anybody is finally required to live up to responsibility, or else, it's amazing, about 98% of the time we actually do it. And then, of course, that comes with self-esteem, and that's where the confidence comes. And then this, the self-efficacy, or the locus of control, meaning our ability to understand that we are in control of our own life. Learned helplessness will keep us from it. And I want you to, pay attention. I'm just kind of using big examples, but really think about just little small things. Because we all have it. We all have this learned helplessness. It could be just an automatic thing, without even thinking. Like, you realize the keys aren't where you left them, but instead of going and looking for the keys, we ask, hey, where's the keys? It's just in that little moment. We have a challenge, we have a situation to deal with, and instead of putting in an effort, we go, oh, hey, wait, did you take the keys? Do you have the keys? Where are the keys? Oh, they're in here, I'll go get them. We tend to pass off, and of course that's not a big deal, especially in relationships. Oh, here, I'll go get the keys. It's not about that. It's not about never needing or relating with someone else. It's about just paying attention to the conditioning of our own learned behavior, because especially with the alcoholic brain, until change occurs, it'll have a tremendous impact on us. I mean, it does, obviously. Okay, so here's I kind of already covered some examples, but remember, it's learned helplessness. We learned how to be helpless. That doesn't mean we were taught how to be helpless. It means that's what we inadvertently learned. Right? If I blow off my homework and I don't want to do my homework, but because my mom doesn't want me to fail, she will finish my homework. So the message is that I don't really have to give it my all. My mom will pick up the slack. Right? Boom, learned helplessness. There, it gets registered in the brain, it gets stored. If I spend my whole paycheck on booze, well, that's okay, because I can always call my grandfather and now I'm not going to tell him I spent my whole paycheck on booze, right? I'm going to tell him that my car broke down, right? Because I got to be a victim of something. I'm going to lie and say, oh gosh, my transmission just went out, and then I'll use the transmission money that I don't really have a problem with, and it's just, that's how we live. but it's centered in this idea that we are helpless. We're not helpless, but think about this, and of course, it's on the board. If self-esteem is developed out of accomplishment, and we all come to the table with such low self-esteem, because what happens is we've been practicing learned helplessness for so long that even though we'll make great efforts towards things that we are excited about, but the minute we're faced with some sort of challenge, right, something that's, oh gosh, this is actually going to require some more effort, or this is going to get a little boring, or golly, I'm going to have to really work through this kind of thing. When we have those kind of challenges, which are just normal life challenges, we go, oh no, I'm not going to do that. And it's okay because whatever, somebody else will roll out the safety net, right? They'll keep me from completely falling. But we have to stop being okay with not falling all the way off the ladder. We have to start desiring how to climb up the ladder. And what comes with that is the building of self-esteem. It's like I know it's such a corny little cliche or analogy, but it's like with every rung we grab, you just built a little bit more esteem. You just gained a little bit more control of your life. You're starting to register, or it's starting to register in your brain that you get to control your outcome. And nobody with high self-esteem ever got drunk or high. Now just think about that for a minute. Let that sink in. Nobody who had a strong sense of self and high well-being ever got drunk or high. It cancels it out. They can't live in the same house. We drink, even if you got the genetics and even if you got a long history, we don't relapse when we feel good about ourselves. We relapse when we feel bad about ourselves, right? And that's why we can put it together for little periods of time. We can do good. Our self-esteem is building. But what happens is we stop doing those things that were building self-esteem. So it starts to decrease. Self-esteem decreases, craving increases. They literally work together. Your esteem increases, your craving decreases. I know that sounds so simple, right? If we could just bottle that and turn it, put it on a sugar pill and just give everybody one. It doesn't work like that. We got to do a whole lot of work to get to that point. We got to deal with all these defects that we talk about all the time. And understanding what drives just this learned helplessness is so vital. Okay, I already covered that. Yeah, okay, so let me just talk about the trauma associated with just the addiction process in and of itself. That in and of itself will develop learned helplessness. Right? How many times, this is rhetorical, how many times have you tried to better your life? Right? It doesn't even have to be drinking or using related. Right? You go through a difficult period in your life, and then you start trying to rebuild it, and you start doing some good things, and then back down again. And then, okay, then we try again, and then back down again. And then we try again, back down again. That, if you can't identify any other traumatic experiences in your life, just look at that one. Of course, that's, you're not looking hard enough. But for the sake of this conversation, the addiction process in and of itself is enough to develop learned helplessness. We try over and over and over and over and over again to get sober. We go from rehab to rehab, from AA to NA to Celebrate Recovery to, whatever, HA, CMA, CA, our buddy's house, Montana, a cabin in the woods in Montana for 6 months. We try all kinds of stuff to get better. It's that old saying, the problem is we keep taking us wherever we go. we don't get better externally, we get better internally. And so we just can't do it. So why should I bother? I'm never going to be enough. I'm always going to need somebody to take care of me, which for a grown-up is more shame, right? We may not act like that. We may act like, well, you owe it to me. You took care of so-and-so, so of course you better take care of me. But that's not really what we're thinking. It's human nature to make our own way. And so when we're not able to do that, we feel enormous shame. And we lose motivation, we lose esteem, we lose hope. It's devastating. The development of learned helplessness just in the addiction process. Here's more symptoms. Frustration, passivity, lack of interest. We give up easily. I think one of the most important things in early recovery is that old saying. Do the next right thing. And if we'll actually apply that, it gets us through. Just think in this process alone. How many times, how many days, how many moments that we've all had where, we feel stuck, we're losing hope, we lose motivation, we lose momentum, it seems overwhelming, and we just want to run. We want to quit. That's what we're doing. We're quitting. And it's okay if I quit because my mom's got a spare bedroom, and Ray's gonna let me use his car, and my old boy Junebug, he's got a job for me, and I'll tell you what kind of snapped me out of that is I tried that when I was in rehab so many years ago, and I got to that moment, and it was pretty early on, maybe after a week or two. I was like, oh, this is BS, I gotta get out of here. These people don't know what they're talking about. And I called home, testing, did that test thinking, they're totally gonna believe me. This place sucks, they don't know what they're talking about, blah, 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 blah. And my brother said very calmly, and mind you, he had just paid off his house. And he went and got another mortgage on his house to pay for me to go to rehab. And that was nothing what I was thinking about. I couldn't care less in that moment. I didn't care what he was doing for me to try to help me. I only knew this is how I feel and you better come rescue me. So I called and I'm doing the thing that we all do. This is BS and blah, blah, blah. And they don't know what they're talking about. And I should be teaching these classes and blah, 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 blah. And he said very calmly, Miles, I'm really sorry that you're having that experience, but I ain't coming to get you. And I flipped out. What do you mean you're not coming to get me? You always come and get me. I was shocked. I really was. And I was like, well, I'm going to call Mother. And he said, well, she's going to tell you the same thing. In fact, she's sitting right here. And it was like, oh my God, I got nowhere to go. And then it became real. And, I think about that experience. I've been thinking about it while I was putting this information together this week. Because for me, that was my turning point of, I don't have to live like this anymore. But I do have to be willing to make my own effort, right? I gotta be willing to follow the solution. It's not gonna just automatically change. And when we stop being okay with the safety net, and we start not being okay with that, I'm not okay with that. I want, we brag about all this stuff we know, and all these things that we can do. Well, who better to pour them into than you? Right? We want the recognition of our skills and talents, but I don't want to actually use them for myself. Well, when that thinking changes, you grow past learned helplessness. This adult entitled dependence is just like it sounds. Nobody's okay with that. We're not okay with that. In fact, it can even feel offensive. Oh my God, that's just me, that's horrible. But it's reality. I am an adult. I do have a sense of entitlement. I do believe, or did in my sickness, that because I feel uncomfortable, I'm I'm anxious, I'm irritable, I'm restless, I'm discontent, I'm disappointed, I'm whatever, that someone else should make it better. And that's not how adults think. That's not how mature people think. That's how children think. You know, we talk about that all the time. And there's so many studies on it. The combination of immaturity and addiction, they go together. Addiction and maturity can't live in the same house. You know, it's like that esteem and craving. We have, consequence-wise, we have mental illness, such as substance abuse disorder. Alcoholism is a mental illness. Addiction is a mental illness. I know most addicts and alcoholics are like, no, I'm just an alcoholic. I don't have mental illness. That is what alcoholism is. It is a mental disorder. And so we're going to keep having these problems until we start living in the solution. We have trouble managing our behaviors. We have difficulty following through. That was a big one for me too, and I think it is for most of us. Blake and I were having this conversation not long ago. I didn't even finish an entire book until I was like 20. You know, I'm talking about just like not like a textbook or something, but just like a book that you read. You know, I'd read the first chapter, maybe up to the 6th chapter, and then read the last chapter. You know, we don't have a long history of seeing things all the way through. We'll start it, we'll do maybe a little bit in the middle, and then we quit. It's not enough. Well, that's this learned helplessness. We don't see the point, right? It's not that big a deal. Our thinking, of course we were talking about that last week, our thinking is so distorted, we don't know how to respond to a normal life situation. Dissatisfaction in life, right? If we're not happy with life, but remember how we deal with this. If I'm not satisfied with my own life, in our learned helplessness, we really believe it's somebody else's fault. You know, I could be happy if only I didn't have to deal with this thing, if the weather would change, if my mom would quit being that way, if my grandfather would stop being that way, if everybody would quit being mean to me, if y'all would just get off my back. Where did I put that? If y'all would just take care of me, you know, then I could really be happy. If life would just magically work out, then I could be happy. Not recognizing that we dictate the results of our life. But, you know, we don't even know how to measure that. Right, because we think things like, well, nothing has ever worked out. Well, the reason, you know, it's funny. It's kind of a catch-22. So much of the things that we tend to complain about, let's say with others, we compare ourselves to others a lot. The only difference between them and us, you know, I mean, how many times have you done it? I mean, we sit around, we go, oh man, that guy, I knew that guy, and he was so stupid. He was one of the dumbest kids in class. It's not fair that he's successful. The reason, and then we'll compare ourselves to that guy, right? Or thing, whatever. Well, the reason is because that person may be outperforming us because they didn't stop along the way and apply this distorted thinking. You know, oh, what I'm doing won't matter, therefore I'm going to stop doing it. The people who we tend to compare ourselves with, we always talk about the intellect. You know, oh, that guy was so stupid, it doesn't make any sense. He must have some unfair advantage. No, the thing that the other person has that outperformed us is the willingness to keep doing it. Just keep doing it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. In our learned helplessness, we get tripped up so quickly. Right? It's not fast enough. It's not quick enough. Somebody else will always throw out the safety net. Okay, so real quickly, here's how we learn how to move past it. And I kind of sprinkled that in throughout anyway, but we've got to gain a new sense of self. And of course, it's not going to happen overnight, but that's the process of recovery. That's what we're all doing here. Learning how to see ourselves in a new way. Not in a lie, but in reality. You know, we don't have to We don't have to figure out how to envision some fantasy about ourselves. You know, okay, well, I want to be Superman. Yeah, I'm going to be Aquaman. And I'm going to act like Spider-Man. Everybody sees us the way we really are, except us. We just have to be willing to learn that. You know, that guy that has capabilities, that guy that has so much talent, that guy who is quite capable, quite able to perform, to figure out, to problem solve, to, you know, whatever, to always move us past that. But it begins with, you know, this, you know, as a recovering addict alcoholic, it begins in our thinking. That the safety nets are gone, and that's a good thing, because that's what motivates us to finally, you know, let's say, make that extra effort, take our life more seriously, do some things that we've never done before. And then all of a sudden we start building self-esteem. Just kind of as a little exercise, you know, you can do it yourself. So much of our thinking is automatic. You know, we've been talking about that a lot lately. It's automatic. So it's like, oh man, I got out of rehab and then I went and drank, and someone asked me, why did you do that? And I said, I don't know. Right, we literally don't know. We didn't want to drink. We weren't thinking about drinking, but it's so automatic that that's the only thing we know to do. Well, it's the same thing with all of our thinking, all of our distorted thinking. So we have to start replacing those thoughts, the old automatic thoughts, such as, you know, I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit. This is too hard. You know, whatever it is, whatever challenge that you're facing. You know, this is dumb. This is stupid. This is too hard. It makes me too anxious. You know, whatever that old automatic thinking is, we have to start replacing it. Because if you'll be honest with yourself, that automatic thinking doesn't stop at, oh, this is too hard, this doesn't make sense, I shouldn't have to. There's more to it. It's that safety net. It's that it'll be okay if I quit. I won't feel good about myself if I quit, but at least I'll have a place to stay, I'll have food, you know, I won't go all the way down. You got to replace that thought. It's okay. Well, I'm at least going to try. I don't have to be perfect. It's okay that I'm having an uncomfortable experience. I'm not supposed to like everything. It's okay that to ask for help. I think that's one of the most important things in recovery. And we talk about that all the time. We don't have to suddenly have all the answers, right? So, man, so I'm going to have to know everything, figure everything out. And you just spent an hour telling me I don't know how to figure anything out. Right. Because we learn one simple thing, and that is how to ask for help. And then it's on, right? Now we got no more excuses. And remember, and I'll end it with this, there's a big difference between asking for help and asking for relief. We have a long history of asking for relief. You know, here's my situation. Oh my God, it's horrible. I just need you, and here's how I'm gonna solve it. I just need you to write the check. Right? That's asking for relief. Here's my problem, and I just need you to do something so I'll feel better. Asking for help which is pretty much the situation that you're in now. Asking for help is here's my problem. I don't have a clue what to do about it. Whatever you suggest, I'm going to follow that. Right? And thank God that's pretty much where we're at now. And then it's amazing what happens when we ask for help and then we actually follow the suggestions, how different life gets. Okay, that's kind of an abrupt stop, but that's, you know, I want to start so you guys can have a chance to talk a little bit. What do you want to share? What do you recognize about the learned helplessness in yourself?
I'm a guest, but can I make a comment?
Please.
A lot of things you were talking about there touched me. I mean, they were, yeah, I recognize that. I recognize it.
Yeah.
But as you were talking about learned helplessness, I thought in my mind, well, that's basically powerlessness.
Yeah.
And once we get there into that pocket of powerlessness or learn helpless, that's our comfort zone. And all these symptoms and the couple of things are things that help us get back to our comfort zone.
Right.
Yeah. And then you made a comment about comparing ourselves to others.
Yeah.
And there's a line in a poem called Desiderata that goes like this. It says, "Never compare yourself to others, because always you'll find those greater than yourself and become frustrated, and those lesser than yourself and become vain." So don't do it. And then finally, if I can remember what my final poem was, I forgot it. Out of the report.
Well, I love it. I've heard that title before, but I didn't know that's what it was.
Desiderata is an incredible. It's very spiritual.
Yeah, that's
and
neat.
Desiderata by itself is a recovery program.
Okay.
So look it up.
Yeah.
Desiderata.
You know, I have a poster of it in our bathroom.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah,
That's
Pardon?
awesome.
Do you?
Have a,
Do you?
yes. It's
Yeah,
a
that's cool.
good one. Yeah, I
So
also
true.
think of stories I've been hearing from people of helplessness, but without even thinking someone else is going to help them, just letting themselves fall and get run over, you know, and just see how much they can take before it, you know. And we were reading in the big book the other night of someone just walking out into the desert, drinking and hoping they'll die.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh no, it didn't work, and I'm going to have to try again tomorrow.
That's funny.
Well, it's not funny.
That's the
It's
sickness.
tragic. Yeah.
That's it.
So, but it's broken
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah.
My other thought was on
Yeah, please.
the thought process.
Yeah.
I call it self-talk, and we use a lot of negative self-talk, and that's what keeps us in our learned emptiness or our learned helplessness.
Yeah.
If we start talking positive to ourselves, change the way we talk to ourselves, it can make a big impact.
That's interesting because we've been talking about that recently. Just the ongoing narrative in our mind, this constant talk that we talk to ourselves, whether it's negative or entitled or I shouldn't have to or whatever it is, it's all wrong. Blake, I was going to kind of put you on the spot. I forget what we were even going to talk about earlier, so don't worry about it. There was a story I was going to ask you to
I don't remember.
share, but I don't remember what it was, so I'll think about it next time. Remind me too, because I met when your family was going to come into town next. I was going to make that Thursday a fire pit group,
Oh,
and I missed